Welcome to the Business Growth Masterclass, where business growth is made simple. Listen as we discuss best practices to streamline your operations, increase your profits, and ultimately create healthier, more stable, and more valuable companies. Today's podcast was with Leroy Henry, and Leroy is an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur who owns Dora Moss, which is a custom Murphy bed manufacturing business, as well as Leroy Henry Remodeling. That is a general contracting construction business that he does work all over West Texas. And Kellen, today's episode was great. The interview was so much fun. I've known Leroy for a long time, but I learned so much from him. What was your kind of number one takeaway? What do our listeners really need to hear in this podcast?
I mean, just hiring great people and taking care of your people were the two things that really stood out to me about Leroy's attitude. And, just hearing his journey from starting to where he is today, how he took those leaps of faith when he needed to. And his sister was a big part of it, which is kind of cool. It's nice when family can work out in the business. It doesn't always happen, as we know.
Yep.
But just hearing him, he kept talking about how much he thinks about taking care of his people and getting the right people in the business. So that was a big one.
My biggest takeaway from that was he is a craftsman and someone who's really good at his trade.
Yes.
And then he went into business for himself, and that takes a different skill set to be a business owner,
right?
To run a successful business. And he really made that transition from, craftsman, tradesman to business owner and leader. And I loved that part of the conversation.
Yeah, that was cool. And seeing how he evolved from one phase to the next. It seems like he's curated his life into what he wants it to be. It's really neat to see somebody who's made it to that point.
He's been very intentional with that.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoy the podcast and enjoy the interview with Leroy Henry. Here you go. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Leroy. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
Can you tell our listeners, what do you do? What do you do for a living? I know you have a few ventures going.
I do. I have a construction company. We do roofing, remodeling, ground up builds. And then somewhere along the way, I got involved in building Murphy beds. So that's one of my things that I do now that I really put a lot into because I've built it from the ground up. Something that nobody else does. And it's had its ups and downs, and just like any other business would have. And
could you tell us what a Murphy bed is?
So Murphy bed is a bed and a cabinet, basically.
Okay.
And it can be that basic where it's a box with the bed that opens up. And I take it a step further, I think, I want to brag on myself a little bit. And that's to say that, I designed these certain looks of the bed and designs. And they've come a long way. Some of them that I look back on, I wish I hadn't made, don't want to tell anybody that I made that one, but we have some really good ones that I'm real proud of.
That's awesome. So it's like in the cabinet on the wall and you fold it out.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think of it always makes me think of Scooby-Doo. I don't know why, but your Murphy beds are like super, like the look of them are very high end, very nice, very custom. Yeah. People when they're building a house and they've got a spare bedroom, that they want grandkids to stay in or whatever, they'll come to you or I guess tell me how that works, because you do a lot of custom work. How does that work?
It seems like almost all of them are a custom job. We have a showroom with 12 different styles, and sometimes people come in and they say, I like that exact model right there. That's the one I want. Color, everything. So we do a lot of what we've designed and we put them in people's houses. But then you get somebody comes in and says, I like that one, but I like the color of this one. and maybe we can add cabinets to it on the sides. And then they start adding in what they like about our designs and what they've, designed in their head. So that's pretty fun because we get to do some stuff that when we post pictures of them, they're pretty fantastic. And so it's a combination of our designs and the customer and what they want.
Cool. It's an artistic process going on there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
You are quite the craftsman and artistic, musically at least. Tell us, how did you get into this? Is this something you've always done? Have you always worked with wood? How did you get into making custom Murphy beds?
Well, I grew up in construction. I literally, like 10 years old, summertime, my dad was working here in Lubbock building houses, or he wasn't building them. He was, whether he was a drywaller or a framer, summertime, he'd say, you're coming with me. So I'd go with him and I'd get to hammer nails and do that kind of stuff. And I grew up loving the smell of new construction. I have people tell me they like the smell of a wood shop. I was like, I understand that. I grew up around it. So that's where that brought me back to after, being in high school and learning how to roof and do all the different construction things that, at high school you're strong and able to do this work. And all of a sudden you could go get a job, and decide not to go to college. Yeah. So that's what I did. My college was get out in construction, move to Dallas and do all these different things with my hands.
And there's a big movement now, especially I think a lot of parents are talking about the trades and like with their kids kind of going that direction. A lot of people who get a college degree now are kind of like, man, I wish I just jumped into something more like what you're describing there.
Yeah, because we have to have it all. I mean, we have to have every kind of trade, whether it's, technical or, college based or, working with your hands. My dad still tells a story of one of his friends who was a principal at Lubbock High, and their son decided he didn't want to go to college. So they said, can you put him to work? And he said, yeah. So we put him to work on a roof. And after that summer, he finished his college career. His college
worked in the other direction.
She's very happy that my dad took him to work on a. So there's all different ways to make a living.
Yeah, that's right. It's good.
You mentioned your construction company and moving to Dallas. I haven't heard that part of your story. And so you in high school you got exposed to some trades, and that was kind of your path. Instead of going to college, you had you could make a living with your hands. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that journey. Did you move to Dallas?
I did. First thing I did was I moved to Midland.
Okay.
And there was a bunch of work going on in Midland. I went there and did roofing and construction. And then from there was a big boom going on in Dallas. So I moved there and did the same thing. I lived there for about 13 years.
What years was that?
That would have been late 80s.
Okay.
All the way up to 2000, because in 2000 when I moved back to Lubbock.
I did not know that. Okay. Yeah. So what part of Dallas were you in?
When I first moved there, I moved to the Colony.
Okay.
And so everybody knows the Colony, Frisco, and all that.
Yeah.
But when I moved there, Frisco was like Rawls. There was a Higginbotham in the middle of town, and there was a few stores and.
That's funny.
Some farmhouses.
Different place.
Yeah, so it was a different place when I lived there. So I lived in the Colony.
And it does not look like that anymore.
Not like that at all.
Okay. And you did construction. What did you do? Roofing?
I did that.
Construction?
I worked for a construction company that did fire rehab. So I learned a lot about the insurance side of it and how, a claim happens if a fire happens on a house. All the stages of, tearing it down and putting it back together. So that's a fun job if you're young and can tear a, $500,000 house down to basically the studs and then get to put it back together.
Yeah.
So I learned a little bit there.
Okay. And then what made you move back to Lubbock?
Well, I had a daughter.
Okay.
And she was 4, and I was kind of ready to come back and be around my family again. You're gone a lot and you don't get to see them, but maybe twice a year sometimes. And she was about to start school.
Yeah.
I knew Lubbock was a good place for her to be in school. So
That's a lot of people's story is
Yeah.
is they go to school here in Lubbock is where we're all based out of, but they go off after school, and when it's time to raise a family, Lubbock's a good place to be.
yeah, that's what I did.
Okay, so you came back, and did you start? Is that when you started your own gig, or how did that go?
Sort of. My dad had already had his he had a roofing company here.
Mhm.
So when I came back, I had some place to, move to, have a job, and help my dad with his company, and did that until I just felt like I was ready for, my own thing. So just started doing my own jobs and slowly went from one small job to another bigger job. And here in Lubbock, if you do good work, you can step from one to another, and then all the referrals start coming in, and then there's no need for even advertising at that point because referrals are big here in Lubbock.
That's a big thing in the construction world or the trades is if you show up and do what you say you're going to do and stay within budget, you're going to get a lot of work.
Yeah.
We talked to some business owners that I think if they heard you tell that, they'd be very envious right now because they're still in the early going, trying to get to the point where people know about them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like how long it took you to go from just kind of starting that to feeling like I don't even have to advertise. People are coming to me.
I'm going to say a good 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Cause you've got to build that base of, I've done work for this person, and then you're still looking for more work like that. It's kind of thin. There's not a lot going on. And then somebody starts coming back around, and then those customers become repeat customers and referrals. And so I'd say about 5 years, and I had more than I knew what to do with. And at that point I went from, a 3-man crew to I need a whole entire another crew and keep them busy all the time. And then pretty soon it gets to the point where I can't even be a part of the crew anymore. I have to be just handling, getting the jobs, moving the jobs through supply, and then getting it to the end stage and finishing and punch list and being done.
How do you feel about the transition? Because I know a lot of business owners do that where they go from being kind of like doing the work and being in it, and then the thing grows to a point where now I'm more of an administrator, right? So for you, what was that like? Was that a hard transition? Do you enjoy that aspect of it, or what?
I like all parts of it. I really like getting my hands back into doing some work, building some cabinets or tiling or doing some stuff. I do like it all. I've gotten into a different business where now we're in a retail part of the business.
With the Murphy beds, right?
Yeah, so we're selling Murphy beds, and we have a retail showroom. So that's another part, and that's the sales where you have to be able to speak to the customers. You have to be able to visit them at home. You have to make sure they get a good product. And so that part I enjoy too.
Yeah.
Just as much as the building process, because it's a gratification thing where I get to see you at your house and you love what we brought to the table and brought you this product, and you're happy with it, and you can't wait to write us a check.
That's
so
cool.
that there's gratification in that. So just like the gratification of building something and seeing it from a piece of wood and tile into something nice.
Yeah.
This is kind of this illustration on steroids, but a lot of entrepreneurs, started their career working for somebody, and they got really good at a certain skill. And then they were like, you know what, I'm really good at this. I could go off and do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're basically they're a tradesman. They have this trade that they're really good at. And then becoming a business owner requires a completely different set of skills. And what you were describing, building these custom Murphy beds that are really like a work of art. Like you really, really have to trust your team to deliver this custom crafted work of art. Tell me, I mean, you've touched on that a little bit, but how do you build a team that you can trust to basically, create these pieces of artwork?
That's one of the hardest things to do, is to take somebody that doesn't know what you do, teach them how to do it, let them do it long enough that they become good enough at it that you can let them do it on their own. That doesn't, the hard part about that is that you've just trained them to do something that they can go and say, well, I can make more money doing it by myself, or I can go work for somebody else. So you have to pay them well. So
That makes sense.
yeah, if you don't, you're basically training somebody to leave.
Your own competition, yeah.
So you have to make them want to stay.
Yeah.
So I have some employees that have been with me for 10, 11 years.
Man.
Yeah.
And what does that training process look like? Like if I came in today, what would you have me doing?
You start at the bottom. I mean, you gotta be ready to sand and prep and do all the things that, a piece of wood looks nice and is finished once you've done all these processes to it. So in order to be the guy that cuts it and nails it and puts it together, and then the guy who paints it or stains it, they had to learn how to prep all these different stages of getting it to that point. So that's where you would have to start, is in the prep area.
It's like a basketball coach teaching the fundamentals first.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Before you can start calling plays,
like a basketball
team. You got to be able to dribble.
If you saw my basketball team, you'd want to play them because you can beat them.
Well, that would be the case for me too. Be evenly matched.
Yeah.
How do you, and that, like, that's, to kids graduating high school right now, like sitting in a shop, sanding, cleaning, kind of doing, the bottom of the totem pole work. That's hard work. How do you keep them engaged long enough? I mean, are you selling, what the future looks like, or I guess how are you keeping them engaged? Because that's so hard today to,
They have to want to be in that. I mean, I've hired some people that just weren't going to be cut out for it. They weren't interested enough in it.
Does it take you long to figure out?
No, not really. You can see that pretty quick. And,
and
I try to, and you're an employer, so you can't just hire people and fire them. You got to give them a chance, and and they kind of, they weed themselves out.
Yeah, over time.
Yeah. So some of that initial fundamental work that they have to do, that kind of weeds out the ones that don't want it.
Yeah. And in construction, you've got to know how to read a tape. Some people have a hard time with that.
So what does that mean? Read a tape. What do you mean? Like tape measure?
Tape measure, and, be able to, you give somebody a sheet of paper and it's got all the measurements for a bunch of doors, and they go and they cut all the material and they put it together, and none of the doors are the right size. So you've just wasted an entire day and a bunch of material. So you got to keep an eye on the new guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that happens to me too. I'll do the same thing if I measure something and tell one of the guys it's 84 inches and I meant to say 48.
Yeah. Which I'm sure happens sometimes.
It does. Yeah. It's happened to me recently, so I'm not immune to that. I'm not perfect.
Sure.
That just made me, I grew up in construction as well.
Yeah.
And memories are flooding back to me right now of measure twice, cut once, and down to the, smaller than a 16th. Like, I want this, 50 inches and 3/16 and cut the line or leave the line. It's like that little minuscule matters, whenever you're making 50 cuts, that little bit of a 16th adds up, and you can have something that looks pretty ugly pretty quick.
Yeah.
Well, when you were talking earlier about, what you're doing now, it sounds to me like, you grew the roofing and construction business and then started the Murphy bed business later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, but do you feel like you've kind of curated things to kind of fit what you enjoy? As the business on the construction side grew, were you kind of missing the creative process a little bit, or is that part of what motivated you to kind of branch out and do?
I just knew
both?
that the construction business can go up and down.
Yeah.
So something years ago made me learn, okay, I have to be able to do something that I can do all year. Mm-hmm. And luckily, with the time that you spend in one place building a business and having a reputation, if you do that right and you have luck on your side, that you're going to be busy all year. And then you have another business that kind of helps, they balance each other out. So you've got something that constantly works. It may not be the the biggest part of your revenue.
Yeah.
But it's there in the slow times. If we're like a couple of months are kind of slow and we're doing less in the construction, or there's no roofing or whatever, you kind of have to have something to balance that out.
So if you were talking to a younger business owner who has a seasonal business, sometimes their revenue isn't there, and they're thinking about doing something similar, what advice would you give them as far as thinking about maybe another business or venture? How would you suggest they think about it?
You have to kind of stay in the range of your business, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you see the guys that do yard work. Mm-hmm. They also do Christmas lights.
Right.
And then, so they grow those businesses because they were, one winter was really slim, so they had to find something else to do. And then, so everybody's doing that. That's what I would suggest, is just to know that you're in a seasonal business. So what are you going to plan to do when that business is slow? Yeah.
So something complementary. Yeah. Well, and in your case, you were even able to find something you also seems like enjoyed and plays to your strengths too.
Yeah.
So
that was accidental, because I'd never thought I was going to build a Murphy bed. I never planned it.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me to do it.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, I'm not even sure what that is, but I'll figure it out, And once I did, I was really in over my head. I thought, I don't know how to get this done, but it was fun. Once I got it done, I was like, okay, I got one done. And then slowly somebody else found out about that one and said, I'd like for him to build me one. And that's how it started rolling and rolling. Pretty soon I was being asked to build Murphy beds. I was like, well, nobody does this, because I'd already done the research. I was like, I was trying to find somebody that could build me one, and I'd sell it to the customer. There was nobody around.
So are you, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not certain. Where, are you just in West Texas? Where all are you delivering Murphy beds?
So we've delivered them to Oklahoma, New Mexico, Dallas, South Texas.
That's a big range.
Yeah, it is. There's not another custom Murphy bed business. There's builders. You can find a carpenter that can build them for you anywhere. But as far as a business goes, I haven't found another one in the state of Texas. There's other companies that are like IKEA, Lowe's, all these other places that say they have them, because you can go to online and order, these IKEA type, they're like shelving units, but there's other builders that I found in other states that I kind of watch too. And I've been in contact with one of them in Arkansas, and we've kind of traded ideas. And
cool.
Yeah, so they've got the idea, and they started it before I did. And so they're a lot bigger, and they deliver to a wider range. They ship them, whereas we deliver and install them.
Okay.
You're a humble guy, and a lot of this you're like, yeah, well, we lucked into that, or we lucked into this, and we built for one, and then it grew. So I know you've had some tough days.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us what's some kind of your biggest lesson you've learned as you've built these two businesses that really complement each other. What's the ugly that entrepreneurs need to hear?
Well, the ugly is that you need to know how to handle the money part of it.
Okay.
You really do, because I've gotten into some jobs that are, really big money jobs. Mm-hmm. Well, you have to be able to keep all the bills paid. You got to pay for all the materials. You got to have that money coming in and make sure it's distributed at where it needs to go.
It's a lot to juggle.
Yeah, it's a lot. So if you're small, you can handle most of it yourself. But once you get to the point where you've got, 10, 15 employees, and you're handling insurance and all that stuff, then you really need to step away from that and let somebody do it for you.
That's like general contractor 101. I've seen that so many times where, you have a handyman who goes and develops a book of business and does a good job, and then books some bigger jobs, and they go buy a brand new pickup, deck it out, put a lift kit on it, and 6 months later they're shutting their doors.
Yeah.
And so I guess elaborate on that a little bit. How did you navigate that? How did you navigate bringing on experts to handle some of those other pieces that, you weren't as strong on?
So I was doing it all myself. And you're talking, I was up till midnight every day. And then I'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, because the best time for me to do books would be from 10 to midnight.
Yeah.
And so I would get home from work, go take a shower, go to the gym or whatever, and then come home, start the coffee, and from till midnight, 1 o'clock, and do all the books.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can do that when you're young, but you can't do it when you get to my age now. I got to go to bed at 9 o'clock. That's no joke. But I get up at 5 now. Yeah. You made me lose my train of thought.
Well, but if somebody's a business owner and they're like, yeah, that's my life right now, what you just described, like we talk to people who are there. So what would you say?
When to decide, you were asking when to decide how to do that, how to make that change. Well, for me, it was, I knew my sister was working for State Farm, and she'd been there for many years. And I knew things were falling apart at that job for her, and whatever else personally and all that. So I was trying to get to the point where I could afford to hire her on, because I knew what kind of money she made, and I wanted to make sure that I could bring her on and she could do the job for me, and she could stay. People you hire have to be able to maintain their lives while they're working for you. So they have to make the money they need.
Yeah.
So when I finally got to that point, I said, okay, I gotta make sure I can do this. So I hired her on, and she knew all the insurance business already, that I deal with claims a lot. And I showed her kind of a little bit of what I was doing. And then she took it way further than that, because I was using very, very, what do you call it? Just like caveman type program on the computer to keep my books, and she came in with QuickBooks and all this stuff that I'd heard of. I was like, I can't learn that.
Yeah.
So she knew how to do all that. So you have to make the leap and say, okay, I'm going to walk away from that and let somebody else do it. So I had my sister, and I could trust her.
It's nice.
There's a lot there. I want to kind of pause for a second. You described earlier of, how long did it take to really get your business going, where you have all of these customers, and it was 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about, for years, you were staying, you've already started your career. You already worked in Dallas, worked for other people, and you come back and you basically start over, and you're working, until midnight for years. And so much of the entrepreneurial story that we see on social media, that we see in movies, that we see all over is you don't see that. Right. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners that are in that stage, in that, my wife and I, we called that our med school season of life, because it was just like, you're just going to grind.
Yeah.
Like that's normal. It's not normal, compared to society, but as an entrepreneur, like, you're going to do that for several years, and maybe not, maybe you're an exception to the rule, and it takes a couple of years to really get going. But I think, like, commending you for sticking it out. It wasn't your first job. You weren't in your mid-20s with all the energy and you stuck with it. You kept doing the right things. And then eventually there was only so many hours in a day, and you had to hire somebody. And so, one, I want to commend you for that, because that's hard. Getting through that stage, not a lot of people do it. I can't remember what the statistic is of the number of businesses that close before 7 years.
Right.
And
I've heard that too. I'm like, where am I at in that?
am I past that? Am I safe?
Yeah.
I think you made it.
Yeah, maybe so.
And then your first kind of administrative hire like that, it wasn't someone that and this I feel like is an important thing for entrepreneurs, because you're talking about, like, you're struggling, you're in it, and money's tight. And I'm sure it was tempting to hire somebody at minimum wage to go in, and you could kind of, all right, hey, you do these couple of things. Right. But you were intentional and strategic enough that you found your sister
Yeah.
who had this skill set that could come and day one add value to your business. Day one, she's better than you are. Yeah, you're going to pay her more, but this allows you to go and do so many other things in the business that you're actually good at, that actually grow the business.
Right.
And that time was worth it because you made a good hire.
And you don't know that while you're doing it. It's like
terrifying.
I didn't have anybody telling me how to do this.
Yes.
So, a lot of this stuff was trial and error, and sometimes made mistakes. But that was a good one. That was a good choice to make, is to bring her on, because that you're right. It gave me the opportunity to go do other things. And that's where, the Murphy bed business could grow and become something, because I was available to do it. I wasn't stuck it in front of a computer all the time.
Something we keep hearing when we talk to business owners, it's not just about getting help, but getting the right help, and because it sounds like it was a great situation with your sister. Not everybody who hires a family member, I know this, it doesn't always work
You're
out
not supposed
to. Yeah. And so, but you sound like it has worked out, but just having another person who has maybe knows things that you wouldn't already have, or, you mentioned QuickBooks, just, I guess it takes a certain level of a leap of faith, right?
Yeah.
As a business owner to say, okay, I'm going to take this person on and put them in charge of this part of my business, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I've had to do it in other areas too, because I couldn't, I did have somebody that I would say is like a foreman, and they worked really well for a while, but then you also, that person could get stale in the job. So you were asking, how do you keep people, interested? So sometimes it doesn't work out. So you are going to have people that come and go.
Yeah.
And so you've invested time and money in some things, and it's gone. Once it's gone, they're gone. So you got to start over again. And you got to make that decision again as to, I got to hire this guy and I got to pay him this much because he brings a lot to the table that I can go do something else. So you're taking this money that, you got to quit looking at it like this is my pocketbook. It's no longer your pocketbook. You're now an employee of your own business. So you have to say, what do I need from this business to get me by so I can live and do my job and let the business grow?
Yeah.
Because you can't, I know people that you're saying they go and buy a new truck.
Yeah.
Well, it's very tempting. You see that money there. It's like, but in about 2 months, we're going to need that. We're going to need that to do something else for the business and for the employees. So that's how you also keep your employees, is because you've now done things for them that they're not getting it in their paycheck, but you make sure they're insured, that they're safe at work. They're not a dangerous job if they're working around saws and blades.
Yeah. So. I can tell that taking care of your people matters to you.
Yeah. I probably just learned that through, my mom and dad. I have to give them credit for it.
Yeah.
Because that's how they've always just raised me to be. It's never been take and take. It's about giving. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit. So kind of got the story of building, grinding, and then you're making your first, kind of working on the business hires. What does your team look like today? How many employees do you have? What's kind of your management team? What does that look like?
We're always around 10 to 12 employees. Sharon is my sister, and she handles everything with the accounting, and she does a lot of work. She puts in a lot of hours. She also runs the showroom. So she's not only managing employee stuff, she's our HR person. We kind of laugh about that, because she's mean as hell.
It takes that. It takes that
yeah,
temperament sometimes.
Yeah, you got to be tough. But so she does a lot of that and sells the beds. She's got the showroom, and she works on Saturdays. So she comes in from 10 to 3 on Saturdays to work the showroom, and it's a lot for one person to do that. And then I do have one person that runs the remodeling guys. So anything out in the field, out in Lubbock, he manages that for me.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I can sit at my job in front of a computer working on bids, looking at plans, and he can call me and ask me for advice. Hey, we're doing this, whatever. But I feel comfortable. I can say, okay, well, I can't be there, just make a decision. So I've got somebody that can do that for me. And then the shop has 3 guys that work in there, and one of them is really the head of all of them, because he's kind of like my quality control. He can do everything in the shop. He can do the painting. He can do the building. He's just kind of learned it all. And he's one of those guys that I brought in just for a week one day. I knew him, and I knew that he had some abilities, and he was a college graduate and was doing some training on his own, personal training. And I asked him, I said, hey, can you come help me for a week? We are slammed and I just need some extra hands. He said, yeah. So he came in for a week. Then that following Monday at our morning meeting, he's sitting there with all the guys. And I was like, I thought you were just coming in for a week. He goes, no, I like it here. I was like, so you want to stay? He goes, yeah, I'll stay. I was like, okay. And so now he runs my wood shop, and he's quality control. I mean, he's very meticulous. So I trust him at the shop. I don't have to be there either.
Where all the magic happens.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have kind of 3 key employees that kind of run different main areas of your business, the construction, the retail side, the sales side, and then the manufacturing side.
Right.
Okay. That's a business.
And
That's
it's
a real
small
business.
It's a small business. It's not huge. I mean, we're not big, but we do a lot. That little group of people, creates a lot.
Yeah.
Just out of, 10 or 12 employees.
It's got to be great to have the level of trust with those people that are kind of helping you run things. And
yeah. Nice.
So what are you most excited about for where your business is right now and kind of where you're headed?
Really, it's just growing the Murphy bed side of the business. I've put a lot into the advertising. Since we rebuilt our business, we had a little hiccup, and now we're back up again.
He had a fire.
We had a fire.
And then his entire manufacturing area and retail store burnt to the ground.
Every bit of it. So, and that's been 1 year ago. So it's July 17th that happened. So we're almost a year there, but we're back up and running. We never stopped and never quit. Just because we lost everything, we still had some place to go to and continue. Employees were still working. So, you
just got creative. And did you rent some equipment in a space? Is that how you pulled that off? Or?
We had some really nice people in Lubbock that I didn't even know just come out of nowhere and just said, hey, I've got a shop you can work in.
That's amazing.
And it was no regular shop. It was like major manufacturing. So we got to go and work in some big CNC machines everywhere. And it was a nice place. Nice people. It just kind of came help for a little bit. And then we got on our feet within a couple of months and haven't stopped.
Do you mind saying who it was, or can you say the name?
I'd rather not.
Okay. That's okay. Yeah. That's all right.
That's a God thing.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And a West Texas thing that was such a season, and how you guys navigated that and have now come out the other side.
Yeah. So just getting your question was, what am I excited for? It's is seeing this thing grow more legs.
Yeah.
And so, which it feels like it is, it's just like we're doing things that new beds that we haven't done. And we have a showroom, and we're fixing to have a second showroom in the new place that we've rebuilt. And we have electric Murphy beds fixing to be for sale.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Remote control.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm really excited that people get to see that, and there's been a market for it, but we've never had that. People have asked, there's people that can't lift a Murphy bed.
I was about to say, some disabled, maybe older people too, can't
just
lower
hit a
it.
button.
That's cool.
Yeah. And they're sturdy too. The other ones, they do have hydraulics on them.
They're a piston. So they're not hard to open and close, but somebody shorter, maybe somebody weaker or older, it could be hard for them.
Right.
Yeah. And I've seen that. So, it's, when we sell it to somebody that has a hard time with it, we just always know that when they're going to be used, there's going to be somebody there to help them open it and close it.
So future is electric Murphy beds, new retail space.
Yeah.
Any new territories you want to explore, or really just grow where you're at?
Just grow where we're at.
Yeah.
The commercials we're running are bringing in so many people that, aren't on Facebook. They aren't in looking for a Murphy bed on Google. They're just seeing a commercial and they're like, you get to that audience and they're like, what's a Murphy bed? I didn't know I wanted one, but I'd like to have one.
Yeah.
There's a people that you can reach like that versus the people that already know about them and they're trying to find somebody that can build them one.
That great segue. I mean, that seeing what you make is not like, I didn't know that existed until I saw it and I was like, holy cow, this is beautiful and sturdy and substantial and something, you want to show.
Yeah.
And so, we try to keep our podcast episodes, 30 to 40 minutes. We're getting close to time. If I wanted to send people to you, how do people do business with you? How do they see your Murphy beds? How do they get in touch with Dora Moss, which is your company, and Leroy Henry Construction? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, close enough.
Close enough. So how do they do business with you?
Well, so we do have a website for the Murphy beds, and that's doramoss.com. And we're on Google for, Dora Moss is on Google. Leroy Henry Remodeling is on Google. And then we have a location at 8004 Indiana in Lubbock.
Okay.
In the Melanie Square Shopping Center.
Okay.
So you just get to that shopping center and you see a big sign that says Murphy beds. So it's Dora Moss, but I decided, people may not know what Dora Moss is. So we made Murphy beds the main part of the sign. And it says by Dora Moss underneath it.
Awesome.
There you
I'm going to
go.
be sending my parents over there. I think they're in the market. So it's perfect.
Yeah. And if not, it's a cool thing to go look at. And, Sharon's there and she's very, very hospitable and very nice. And we're no pressure. I mean, people want to come in and look at them. We see people coming in to see them all the time and look at them. But the good thing is that they've seen them.
Yep.
And it's going to be on their mind if somebody ever needs to talk about it or has a question, they can say, hey, I know where a place is. And that brings people into
awesome
word of mouth.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, man, thank you so much for your story and, the business that you've built here in Lubbock. Grateful for you guys and proud of you guys. And I can't wait to see what it looks like a year, 5 years from now.
Me too.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That was our podcast. I hope you got a lot out of it. I know we did.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed that podcast, if you enjoyed the lessons that you learned and want more of that, go ahead and click subscribe. Subscribe to our podcast and keep coming back. We'll try to get episodes out weekly and keep coming back because there's more where that came from.
That's right. Thank y'all.
Thanks.